Well, good morning, Redeemer, and welcome to Maundy Thursday. Strange name, isn't it? When I was a kid, I thought it was Monday Thursday, but it's not. We're going to talk about that. I'm Carl Santos, the senior pastor here at Redeemer in Niagara Falls. Great to have you here. If you've been following along with us for these devotions, then well done. If you haven't and you're just jumping in, they're short. You can go catch up. It'll be a good prep as we lean into Good Friday tomorrow. And remember, we won't have one of these videos tomorrow. We've got a service at the church at 10 a.m. Join us in person or on Facebook or wherever you can. But let's jump into this now. Monday, Thursday. Let's read what John says about it in chapter 13 of his gospel, verses 31 to 35. When he had gone out, Jesus said, "Now is the Son of Man glorified, and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will also glorify him in himself, and glorify him at once. Little children, yet a little while I am with you. You will seek me, and just as I said to the Jews, so now I say to you, where I am going, you cannot come. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, just as I have loved you. You are also to love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have loved one another." So, Maundy Thursday. It's called Maundy Thursday because it's based on the Latin word mandatum, which means commandment, mandate, because of this commandment, this new commandment that Christ gives. But is it a new commandment? It's not really a new commandment because, all through the Old Testament, Israel is urged to love one another and love their neighbor and so on. So it's not really a new commandment. But what is happening is similar to what was happening in the Sermon on the Mount, which we just preached through, is that Jesus is redefining these terms for them, showing them the way it was intended, the way they have gone astray. And he's giving them this example and showing them what it means to love one another. And he literally says, you're to love each other the way he has loved us. So, when I was an early believer, I was barely a Christian. I remember reading through the Gospels, and I read Luke, and then I read John. And as I was reading through John, I so distinctly remember laying on my bed reading this on my back. And I had a poster of Che Guevara on a wall. It was in a house that I shared with 5 other people. And as I read this part, I remember putting the Bible, this little NIV somebody got me, put it on my chest. I looked up. I remember thinking about this. Thinking, isn't it strange that this guy, this Jesus, would say at this point in his story that he is glorified? Because even in my head, at that time, I thought, surely, for someone to be glorified, something good has to be happening to them. I would imagine him to say, now is the Father glorified, when he's raised from the dead. Or when he's even dying on the cross, showing his love. But for him to say, now am I glorified, when he's being betrayed, because this passage happens just as Judas is leaving the upper room, that's shocking to me. Because he is saying that in being betrayed, God is glorified. And that is topsy-turvy. This is not the king that Israel was looking for, and it's not the one you and I are looking for, but it is the one we need. So, what is he showing us? He is showing us what it means to love, and it is radical, it is difficult for us to grasp. And look at what he's just said, love one another as I have loved you. And how has he loved them? Well, he has just finished washing their feet. He has just eaten with them. He has just basically told Judas to go and betray me quickly if you've got to do it. So Jesus is showing them that the way to love is to have a self-debasing kind of love. A love that is willing to be abused. And that is difficult. And I'm not speaking here about spousal abuse and those sorts of things. But I am speaking about a sacrificial love that lays down its self-interest for the sake of those who need it. And that is what Jesus is doing here. It's what we're being shown. And what I find really fascinating here is that he loves Judas. When he says at the beginning of this chapter 13, verse 1, he says that John records this. Now before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of this world to the Father, having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. He loved them right to the end, even when they abandon him, even when they betray him, even when they show that they haven't understood at all. When they are at their worst, nailing him to the cross and complicit in the cross, he loves them. And that is why he can say he is glorified, because God is never more beautiful than when he is bearing the sins of the world, when he is taking a beating for our sake. One who does that for us, knowing that he doesn't have to do it, but does it willingly. That is the beauty that he sees. This is the sacrificial beauty of the cross that we're about to see on Good Friday. It's difficult to see, it's hard to stare at or encourage to. But that is what he is asking us. He is saying that God knows that love is sometimes one way. That there's sometimes that you will, even in your case, in my case, you may love a child when they don't show any sort of love to you. And yet you are called to bear that burden, to love them even if they don't love you. That's what you're called to do. And this is what God is showing us here. And he has bound himself to us in this way through the covenant. And for me, I'm reflecting today on what does it mean? What would it mean if Redeemer was to become this sort of a church? There's so many reasons to be divided in our church and in the community as well, with the government and so on and COVID. There's so many reasons to point fingers at the leadership of the church or leadership of our country and get angry. And Christ is saying, is that the way we're supposed to do it? I'm not talking about here standing up for injustice. What I'm talking about is, look at the cross. When injustice was done, and Christ bore it silently as a sheep before the shearers for our sake. That is to be our model. And I don't know what that means for where you are and where we are entirely, but I am saying that Maundy Thursday asks us to reflect on that. What does it mean to love one another and to love this world the way Christ has loved it? With that, let's reflect on that today. Thank you for joining us through this series. Hopefully you found it somewhat encouraging, and we'll see you tomorrow at the Good Friday service. Have a great day.